The scheme is to issue each of the 12 aldermen with a personal laptop computer. The computers are lightweight and will do away with the need for large council minute papers that are often more than 3 centimetres thick and are thrown out the morning after the council meetings. The system will see each council department and the town clerk file their reports on a floppy disk that will then be duplicated and given to each alderman, allowing them to view the reports at home or sit on the alderman's table during the meeting. Lord Mayor John McNaughton has seen the computers in use in other councils and can see a number of advantages.
Well, there are major benefits of having availability. You can put about 15 of these business papers in the computer at a time. So if you want to know something about a last meeting or meeting 3 months ago, you can just call it up on the screen while you're talking. There's a lot of efficiency advantages of doing it.
Each computer is worth around $7,000, but it's estimated they will recoup their worth in paper savings alone within 12 months. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
Corporal Darrell Henbury was found lying in a pool of blood on the floor of his quarters at the Williamtown base just after 5 o'clock last night. He'd been there for 31 hours, having suffered a bullet wound to the neck late on Sunday morning. The official word from the RAF is that Corporal Henbury's rifle discharged while he was cleaning it. When his neighbour found him in the single quarters, he was weak from loss of blood and paralysed from the neck down. He was airlifted to Royal North Shore Hospital, where the latest reports say he's still unable to use any limbs. Today, Wing Commander Ross Kelly announced a full investigation would take place. Corporal Henbury had arrived at Williamtown only a few weeks earlier, having been posted from Darwin to work in the Clerical Supply Division. The 26-year-old is unmarried, living in the single quarters on the base. He was one of few personnel who'd remained on base for the long weekend, which Wing Commander Kelly said could explain the long delay before he was found.
At about 5 o'clock, the accident vehicle had pulled over the side of the Pacific Highway just north of Karua when suddenly a Repaint Terrace ambulance vehicle with its siren and flashing lights on drove over a crest on the highway, responding to an accident further north. However, seeing the parked squad car, the ambulance crew thought they had arrived and slammed on the brakes. A Repaint Terrace highway patrol car following behind ran into the back of the ambulance, which in turn hit the squad car in front of it, which in turn flattened a traffic sign. The ambulance caught on fire, but this was quickly extinguished. The heavy holiday traffic on the highway was temporarily brought to a standstill. No one was injured in the crash. However, the highway patrol car is to be written off. Willie Lafitte for NBN News.
The atmosphere at Eisteddfod is quite different to that at most performance competitions. Here it's the parents who have the nerves, worrying about costumes, getting the hair right and generally preparing their small charges for the big moment. As for the performers themselves, well, it's all in fun, isn't it? But a little last-minute practice doesn't go astray. The Abermain Eisteddfod is one of the longest running in Australia and also one of the largest. This year, almost 500 contestants of all ages danced, spoke, played or sang. By far the biggest category was dance. 3 extra days were added to the program to accommodate all the contestants, entrants attracted by scholarships and prizes, and of course the chance to wear those glamorous outfits. The competition continues until Sunday.
Now, Jason and Dean Parkinson can set up their stock feed and saddle resupply business. Coral Johnston can begin marketing her sporting designs, and Jason Peel can sell his crayfish to an eager Australian market. The Youth Business Initiative program has been set up by Prince Charles in the United Kingdom. Its aim to help unemployed youth help themselves. Now it's in Australia.
I had an audience with Prince Charles about 2.5 years ago and was thinking of doing a bicentennial project, and he said go back to Australia and do a pilot and we'll see how it pans out. And then he got in contact with the Queen Elizabeth Jubilee Trust, which was one of his family trusts, and got them to take it under their wing as one of their major projects.
For 5 weeks, the youth learnt essential marketing and business skills and assessed their own business potential. For the next 12 months, they'll have to market their products or services with ongoing guidance from the Hunter Region Enterprise Agency. They'll receive a cash grant from the government and a living allowance. For some graduates, opportunity knows no bounds. Do you think you'll succeed?
100%. I know.
What's your aim, long term?
Long term, within 10 years to be the largest crayfish producer in Australia, to be exporting to Europe and Japan.
You know, there's just so much to setting up a business, it's amazing. Now looking back on it, I didn't know anything before I started the course, really.
Around Australia, 51 young people have successfully set up business in Victoria and Sydney. Now dozens more hope to follow in the Hunter. Willie Lafitte for NBN News.
It is hard to imagine that a club which had the leading attendances in the league during the season proper could be in financial difficulty. And according to Chief General Manager of the Knights, Brian Judd, that's not the case on a day-to-day trading basis. What is causing the Knights concern is the ground and the amount of money they have to spend in its continued improvement.
It is the ground, the monies that we've spent on this ground here actually, that are causing us the worries. And we've approached the New South Wales Government for assistance in that area.
Obviously there can't be too many worries in the vault of the new boys in the Winfield Cup, as they have applied to the New South Wales Rugby League for an increase in the salary cap from $1.3 million to $1.5 million. This proposal has been put on the back burners for the moment.
We'll probably during the month of October complete our signings, and at that stage, probably the end of October, we'll go back to the New South Wales Rugby League and say these are the players that we need to run our football club in 1990. This is the cost that we've incurred, and we'd like to increase our salary cap by that amount.
And the Knights look like taking one more step to becoming totally professional by appointing Alan McMahon as full-time coach, a position the big fella sees as essential to the club's development.
Basically I was to a certain extent this year, and the club sees in the benefit they might be doing the same thing next year, which we've had a very, very small, preliminary talks about, and the club's to meet on that fairly shortly and to come back to me, and I think that's the way in which sides have been going now in the competition, and even one club I think is even having talk of a lot of their elite players doing the same thing. So certainly what you have to do in this competition is equalise with your opponent, and that's one way in which the Knights, are just going to equalise and get more professional.
They may be just bulls to city folk, but to Poll Hereford breeders these are works of art, deserving the closest scrutiny.
Smoother coated fellas a better chance of getting your revealer.
Yeah,
That's a lovely line of bulls, aren't they?
Yes.
No doubt about that.
These are the best of the best, the result of years of breeding by one of Australia's top studs. Bulls with a lineage as impeccable and as carefully charted as royalty. Even so, cattlemen and women aren't ruled by statistics, and the pre-auction inspection is a very serious business.
Big variation between the size, the top to bottom of the bulls. Now you just cast your eyes over, and some of them are good little bulls, but they're quite small compared to other ones.
No matter how hard you look, though, there's one thing that even the very best of eyes can't determine for sure, and that's whether these expensive bulls are going to do the job that you've bought them for. Wooden Stud is one of only a few in Australia to guarantee that side of things. Buy any one of these bulls, and if after 12 months it proves infertile, you can bring it back for a refund. The importance of the Wootton sale can be judged by the new moleskins and ties. For 27 years they've been coming, hoping to capture some of that Wootton magic for their own herds. This year, 60 commercial cows went under the hammer, averaging $2,100 each. The big money, however, was saved for the bulls. Although they didn't make the very high prices of last year, bidding was at times very spirited. Pick of the day was Wootton Crest 40. He didn't disappoint, adding more than $5,000 to the tally. Top price, however, went to Wootton Crest 42. The strapping 2-year-old brought $6,000.
Delighted with the sale. Record average and record gross.
Why do you think that was? Why were people willing to pay that sort of money?
Well, the cattle industry is healthier than it was last year. There's an aura of optimism about it, and I think it's just reflected in the marketplace.
This is a typical sponsorship announcement Newcastle's public radio station 2NURFM is running. It, like most of the station's other sponsorships, is in breach of new Australian Broadcasting Tribunal regulations introduced 18 months ago. Under some of those new rules, a sponsor may have its name, address and phone number mentioned once only during an announcement. Otherwise, it's considered to be of a promotional nature, which is the privileged domain of commercial radio stations. The new rules have basically been ignored until last week, when the Australian Broadcasting Tribunal took a Gold Coast public radio station to the federal court. The court upheld the new rules, which means every public radio station must hurriedly comply or risk losing its licence.
Without a doubt, I think every station, the whole 80 public broadcasting stations in the country, would be breaching the rules.
Brett Gleeson says that Radio 2NURFM receives a fifth of its funds from paid sponsorships, amounting to almost $60,000 last year. While claiming the station may have to sack 2 full-time staff, including their only professional on-air announcer and their sales promotion person, Mr Gleeson says he doesn't think the station will lose existing clients and seems to have already formulated further plans to survive.
Despite all this, I think our future is assured. It's just going to make management very, very difficult for the next few months. I guess that's the situation.
What the station intends to do is canvass their 50,000 listeners for financial support, which could well be a lucrative new area.
Looking at the American situation, they gain the bulk of their funds to operate from their listeners. In some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wildlife illustration is a specialised art form requiring great patience and an eye for detail. Each year, a small number of artists who've shown they have those qualities are accepted into the specialised strand of the Graduate Diploma in Art course. Although the students are working towards an end-of-year mark and exhibition, the proudest moment for one comes at this time each year with the announcement of the winner of the National Parks and Wildlife Service Scholarship. State Independent Member for Newcastle, George Keegan, was given the task of announcing the winner from 5 finalists.
The winner of the 1989 Wildlife Illustration Scholarship is Lyndall Keller.
Lyndall Keller has taught art in a number of high schools and managed an art gallery in recent years. This year she decided to plunge headfirst into illustration, her detailed treatment of the subject matter winning the judges over, but it was, she says, a labour of love.
It was just a subject that I've always liked, and the Waratahs were out at the time that I did it, and the honey eaters as well. So I suppose just going out and researching from life, it was the inspiration.
The 26-year-old driver from Coffs Harbour was trapped in the cabin when his truck's hydraulic lifting ram malfunctioned while unloading a shipment of wood chips at about 8 a.m. He was released after several minutes by ambulance officers and taken to Royal Newcastle Hospital, where his condition is satisfactory. In a separate accident this afternoon, a 75-year-old farmer was airlifted to Newcastle after he was run over by a tractor on a property outside Singleton. Late this evening, he was still in intensive care in a serious condition. Combined mining union delegates reacted with disbelief to the privatisation announcement. They say they were told by the Energy Minister that they would be involved in moves to sell off the mines. According to the men, that undertaking wasn't honoured. Elcom New Vale Combined Mining Union's President Arthur Kent wouldn't discuss industrial action until information from today's discussions was referred back to the rank and file.
At this stage, we've got quite a few options without getting into too much detail on that, because like I said before, we have got to report that rank and file. There's a responsibility there first up. But once that action is available, we'll certainly let new people know exactly where we're heading with it.
What the unions are likely to concentrate on is a publicity campaign, arguing that privatisation of the mines won't mean cheaper power in New South Wales.
If the privatisation is allowed to take place, well, certainly it'll increase everyone's power cost in the state.
And why will that happen?
It will happen because the private mines will not subsidise the cost of electricity, and it will have a marked effect on every use of electricity in New South Wales. It will certainly increase their electricity costs over the last 12 months.
Federal Environment Minister Graham Richardson and State Minister Tim Moore put aside political differences in the name of a common cause. The opening of Sea Acres Nature Reserve appeared to irritate some of the residents, but it marks a new step towards protection of Australia's disappearing rainforests and their inhabitants. Senator Richardson estimates that 3/4 of our rainforests are gone. The ratio is even higher for coastal forests.
Well, it's tragic to think that we had a coastline covered with the sort of rainforest that we're looking at today. And now, if one goes right down the New South Wales coast, we might have a couple of 100 hectares of it. It's a great tragedy that it'll never be there again. But what we've got left, we've got to fight to the death to protect.
The ministers and Parks and Wildlife officers inspected the reserve's education centre before taking a stroll through the treetops on an elevated boardwalk running more than a kilometre into the forest. Most of Australia's lowland rainforest has disappeared, having fallen prey long ago to land clearers and loggers. And when you consider the intense urban development around this area, it's a miracle it survived at all. But there is a reason. The site was dedicated as an animal sanctuary in 1913. Former lessee Ron Harmer says the people of Port Macquarie had a high regard for the area, even at a time when it was more fashionable to exploit land than to preserve it.
The very first people who came to Port Macquarie recorded, this is round about 1820 to 30s, recorded in their diary that this particular area was very significant and very much different to anything else they'd ever seen. It doesn't matter how many years you live here or how many trips you take around this boardwalk, you'll see something new every time.
From March through to September, Year 11 students from the 17 schools involved in the scheme were mixed and matched into 6 companies. They were set up like the real thing, to plan, produce and market a product. Of these, 2 companies have been selected among the top 10 in the state. Euphoria, sponsored by the Water Board and including kids from Merewether, Katara and Newcastle Highs, and the Grammar School, made wooden cube pen holders. Yaztec, with students from Lambton, Jesmond, Newcastle, Waratah and Glendale, was sponsored by Tube Makers and made garden hose holders. There is also a Best Achiever Individual Award, judged on presentation, knowledge and overall business acumen, which went to 16-year-old Andrew Walker from St Francis Xavier.
There were 7 finalists for the Hunter Region Young Achiever of the Year, and they were all exceptional young people. It was a very difficult task to choose the finalist. However, the finalist really impressed us with his maturity, and probably that was the final decision of the judges that just swayed it in his direction.
The cows have now travelled 3,800 kilometres, starting in Sydney last Saturday and coping with severe road conditions on the way to Canberra, Melbourne, Griffith, Dubbo before arriving at Broadmeadow this afternoon. David came along for the driving challenge. Mascot dog Rags came along for fun, but Paula Burgess came along because she needs a new kidney. She's one of 1,000 people in Australia who need kidney help, which is why the Australian Kidney Foundation set up their appropriately named Kidney Caper. This is their first run ever, attracting 94 adventurous drivers. They included John Murray, son of legendary Red X Bash driver Jalaknight Jack Murray, who was renowned for throwing sticks of Jalaknight out of car windows. John was driving his dad's famous Grey Ghost, a 1948 V8 Ford Mercury, but it broke down near Barrington. Along with their 24 bush-bashing go cars came an impressive contingent of show cars on display tonight at Broadmeadow Showground. They beat the bush cars to Newcastle, having travelled on less taxing bitumen roads. Star cars include a 1949 Jaguar Mark V and a fiberglass Sabre kit car. The cars will leave for their final leg to Sydney tomorrow.
Fanned by southerly winds that gusted to 45 kilometres an hour at times, the flames spread quickly throughout the park. Fire officers believe the blaze was deliberately lit, starting in the southwestern corner of the park in a spot where a similar fire began 2 years ago. The fire in the recreation park also began only minutes ahead of 2 smaller fires set in Chain Valley Bay. Wyong Fire Controller Graham Swain says the firebug knew how to maximise damage.
Certainly knows what to do to create problems for us. Lit it in the right position, in other words. If he lit it up on the northern side, it wouldn't have taken off as it's done.
With the fire racing through paperbark trees and plenty of leaf litter, firemen set a number of backburns in an effort to stop the fire from jumping the nearby Pacific Highway. However, the backburns and the fire itself sent a thick plume of smoke drifting across the roadway, forcing police to close the road off for 20 minutes until the smoke cleared. Today's fire follows a busy weekend for local fire brigades. Yesterday, firemen only just managed to get a fire break-in around some homes in Belmont and the township of Madawi. On Saturday, and fire control responded to 80 separate outbreaks, the worst at Macquarie Hills. As the fire spread through tinder-dry bush, many firemen had to wear breathing apparatus in a battle against the thick smoke. At one stage, a crew from Cardiff were only metres from being caught in a firestorm as the fire swept up a gully and into the treetops. Today's total fire ban will continue till midnight and may be extended into tomorrow. Nine students from Francis Greenway High decided as part of their farewell community project to repaint the Woodbury Neighbourhood Centre. The centre was established 5 years ago and has undergone drastic structural changes, all without a paint job. Throughout the week, the centre holds craft, multicultural classes and preschool. First thing this morning, the students rolled into their work, adding a splash of salmon to the walls and some flat white to the ceiling. Besides painting the centre, students also planted a number of trees around the school grounds. School captain Chris Ledden says everyone soaked up the opportunity to help out.
As you can see, I've been here and I'm covered in paint. I
think I've got more paint on me than what I've got on the walls.